Adrienne Jankens. I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction and then I'll wrap up at the end of our roundtable presentation today. And we're excited to each kind of give you a snapshot of what's happening, not just the theories and goals that ground our creation of this learning community and our vision for it, but what's actually happening in the classroom. So today I looked over what everybody was going to talk about, and I saw two major themes emerge, and you'll probably see some of your own. But one of those is care, and the other is thoughtful, collaborative experiments. So I'm just going to say a little bit about those before I pass it on to Amy. In terms of care, today you'll hear peer mentors and instructors talking about the role of care in our work with students. They will talk about supporting students through challenging learning moments, responding to text messages in the anxious hours before a project is due, listening to students when students are not able to say the exact challenge that they're having, and learning to ask the right questions. While care is not one of the many C's that makes up our learning community's mission or goal statements, those are things like collaboration and community, it's at the foundation of our work. My own teaching is significantly based in Brian Camborne's Conditions for Learning, one of which is that learners need to have relationships with teachers, and I'll add here peer mentors and their own student peers, whom they trust, like, and respect in order to successfully develop their learning. I think our learning community does that work, developing these foundational relationships in all directions: student to student, student to peer mentor, student to teacher, and peer mentor to teacher. Teacher to teacher too. In terms of thoughtful, collaborative experiments, being a part of a learning community means that our pedagogical experiments have a support structure and feedback loop, that we have a group to pitch ideas to develop strategies with, and to reflect on results with. We continue to develop channels for these conversations and reflections in response to the actual working conditions of our semesters. You'll hear us talk today about smaller experiments in the classroom and about larger experiments like integrating peer mentors into online classes. So I'm going to hand it off to Amy.
So in the beginning, around 2013, 2014, in that year, the four of us here today, came together and we thought we all wanted some sort of mentoring component to composition courses. We felt like that was something that needed to be a part of what we were doing. We saw the Writing Center supporting students in tutoring, instructors supporting in teaching, and we thought that a lot of the students that we had worked with, would be wonderful coming back as mentors to work with students, and we thought that would strengthen everything that we were doing, in addition to the fact that writing is required for nearly every student at the university, so we could support so many students through a learning community. So in that year, we applied for a working group grant through the Humanities Center, and we were approved for that. So we spent that time researching best practices around peer mentoring, specifically in writing. So for example, we saw it as a triangle, right, where we had tutoring, teaching, and mentoring, whereas peer mentoring looks different in other disciplines. It had to have its own operational tool with writing. It wasn't just tutoring, it was truly mentoring. So we needed to know what that was all about. After that year, we launched a small pilot with a few sections, the ones that two or three of us were teaching. And specifically for me, mentoring, because as was mentioned, my research focuses on basic writers, so those students that come into the university needing to prepare themselves for first year writing. And so I needed to know what that relationship would look like for 1010 students in addition to first year writers and beyond. And so we started to figure out what mentors would do in their different capacities in these, and how, for me specifically, my students in 1010 saw 1020, the next step in their writing lives here at Wayne State, and how that mentor relationship would work not only within 1010 students, but also across to 1020 students and those mentors as well. And so in 16-17, as you can see, we were granted more peer mentors. I think at this point we've tripled in size since our pilot, and we anticipate continuing to grow through the support of not only the Humanities Center, but the English department at Wayne State, the composition program, and the university in general. We've had wonderful support and we're so appreciative of it. But we're going to turn it over to our mentors now, and they're going to tell you a little bit about their experiences. And we'll start with Deja Davis, who is a peer mentor in my class, English 1010. So she's just going to talk a little bit about her experience.
Okay, hi everybody.
Hello.
My name is Deja Davis, as you just heard. I'm a criminal justice major here at Wayne State, minoring in public relations. I started mentoring 2 years ago. I actually had Amy as a professor my freshman year. So I think we got really close because I was one of those students who failed by like 2 points. And then I came back and I took her again because I was like, yeah, I'm about to fail me by 2 points. And I took her again, but she seen my personality and she says, I believe that you're a really hard worker. Come back and I would like you to mentor for us. So I actually didn't know what mentoring was. I didn't know what that would be like because at this time I was 18 and I didn't know any better. I didn't know any better than anybody else. So, but as time went on, I realized and I agreed to it because when I first came into Wayne State, some of my peers didn't know how to read and write properly. They didn't know punctuation. They didn't know things like that. And I also noticed that talking to a professor can be hard and you become you feel like you're alone when you don't have anybody there to say, hey, it's okay, you can ask me and I'll ask the professor for you. You know, it's a medium between the professor and the book. And my experiences with peer mentoring have been absolutely amazing because I get to know students. I've made a lot of friends. I think that the students like the peer mentor being there because when I first go into a class, I tell them, I am you. I'm just like you. I'm a student here. There is nothing different between myself and you, except you are at a different stage. And sometimes they're not at a different stage. When I first started peer mentoring, there were people that were older than me that just hadn't grasped the concept of reading and writing yet. So I think it helps. And it makes people feel comfortable in knowing that they have a support system to go to because I offer all my information, email, telephone number, you can reach me at any time. And I think that's really important. So I think that's it.
Thank you, Deja.
Okay, my name is Cheryl, and this is my second semester as a peer mentor. Last semester was my first, and so far it was my most memorable semester. I wanted to talk to you today about an experience that completely opened my eyes to being a peer mentor. I think it truly defined me as a peer mentor this semester, this past one. So it was the first week of school in September, going way back, and I encouraged the students to always contact me any day, anytime. I wanted to be there 100% for them. I stressed it to them. I said, hey, my phone's not blowing up with any questions. I said, I need you to call me. And it was a Friday night, the first week of school. I was at a football game and my phone rang and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna take this. It was a student and I was like, wow, I'm impressed that it's a Friday night and you're doing your English homework. So I answered and this student, he was so sweet. He was like, I'm sorry that it's a Friday night, but I really could use your help on my rhetorical analysis. The rhetorical analysis was their first project that was due. And he wanted to get a head start on it, and he was really set on getting an A. And I was like, I'm really proud of you for, jumping the gun on this. So he sent me over his draft, and I was reading through it as soon as I got home from that football game, and I noticed the first thing was that his sentence structure was not, something wasn't flowing right. So I took a look at it and I made my suggestions and I told him, I said, don't be alarmed with all my comments on the side of your paper. I said, this is just helpful criticism. So he worked at it, he sent me it back again, and he took my considerations into, context. And after he turned in his project, he told me, he's like, Haley, I only got a B. And I was like, don't worry, that's excellent for your first paper. You know, you're a freshman in college. Don't fret about it. So I thought it was funny. He kind of reminded me of myself, you know, just like, oh, well, I wanted an A, but this is a B. So he tried harder. So weekly, I would be in constant communication with him. He was always asking me for questions on small assignments, whether it be a blog post that was very like laid back and casual, or it be, you know, like an actual assignment. He was always asking me for my opinion on his work. So we get to like the middle of the semester, and I noticed that he was one of the only ones contacting me. So this showed me that he was a dedicated student. And as he continued to show me his work, I noticed that he was getting better, okay? And it was amazing to me because I noticed, like, he was picking up on things I was suggesting, and I think he even would, you know, consult Dr. Jankens as well, because it was in her course. And it was awesome to me that he was so open with me and always wanting my suggestions. So it came to the end of the semester, and he made progress, and he wanted assistance on his last project of the semester, and it was like a reflection piece, basically just reflecting on his progress through the semester, and just kind of revisiting each project he had done, and showing his strengths and some things that he improved on. And it was a very laid back assignment, in my opinion. I did it my first semester, and it was something that I knew he shouldn't have been concerned about, but he was. He wanted that A again to finish his semester. So I helped him with that, and we had a small conversation after that. And he's like, I can't wait to go home for Christmas break. I'm really looking forward to it. And I was like, well, where's home for you? He goes, Dubai. I was like, whoa, that's like 6,000 miles away. And so I sat back, and I was like reflecting on this semester with him, and I'm thinking, this student was, I was his building block. He was at square one in September. He had a very little background knowledge in English. He had a strong accent, in my opinion, but I would have never have guessed that he was coming from such a different background, you know, like he didn't have English as his first language, he didn't have an English course before, and I was like, wow, I was his peer mentor this semester, and I helped him, you know, gain a good understanding of the English language and composition. And actually, at the end of our conversation, he's like, I really appreciated your help this semester. You helped me gain confidence. I made him feel comfortable, and he said to me, he's like, do you think there's any way I could join the composition learning community next year? And I was like, I will have to see about that. So that was just like one like moment and experience for me that really opened my eyes and showed me that, wow, being a peer mentor is important. I just, you know, help this student learn to love English and composition. So yeah, that's my experience.
That's awesome.
If we're gonna do 10, 10, 10, 20.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Okay. So I am gonna talk to you guys a little bit about the thoughtful collaborative experiments. Jule and I both kind of had some pilot experiences last semester. She with 30-10 and I with English 10-20. But just sort of to transition from these wonderful peer mentors, I think it's really helpful to think about what both Haley and Daisha represent in the best of our peer mentors, which is that care that they take both to represent their personal experiences, as Daisha was describing to you. I've been there. I took this class, I had highs, I had lows, right? And then Haley also represents an element of care, which is in supporting the students with the content knowledge of the course. So there's like different ways that mentoring manifests itself, and I think our peer mentors do an amazing job of demonstrating that for our students every day. But I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk to you guys about some nuts and bolts think about this as me reporting the results of a scientific experiment, except instead of chemicals and gloves and mad scientist laugh, it was the composition classroom. Last semester I taught English 1020 online, which was a brand new experience for me. My favorite place to be almost in the whole world is in the classroom, face to face with my students. And so to teach online, of course, is an interesting new challenge for any teacher, but additionally to teach a writing course and to teach the Gen Ed writing course. It's not all students' first writing course because many of them take English 1010, but this is a course that is particularly well suited to face-to-face interactions because you can really communicate tone and support, and peer mentors can be circulating in the classroom, answering questions, integrated into group work. How was I going to do any of that, right? How am I even going to have a peer mentor in an online course? How could I take Daisha and put her online? I mean, there's lots of ways, but here is the ways that myself and my peer mentor Kasim piloted this. Some things worked really well, some things still need tweaking, as Jule and I are both going to kind of share with you guys. But the experience with students and peer mentors in English 1020 online broke down into some specific tasks for the peer mentor and some specific activities for the students. So for the peer mentor activities, one of the ways that I sort of translated that in-class experience of the peer mentor being there bodily was that I asked Kasim to create bi-weekly videos for the students, which he was happy to do, and thankfully he had a great background knowledge of creating screencast videos, so he did that without any aggravations. I also asked him to both email the students and to be open to receiving emails from the students. And I created a couple of specific assignments that were worth points for students to interact with Kasim particularly, or to integrate him into those assignments. So that kind of stood in the place of for example, in English 1020, we do a research project, and one of my classroom days would be in the library. Students, after they've learned a little bit about the databases, then they get some time to research their questions, and on a face-to-face day, myself and my peer mentor would be circulating around the computer lab, checking in with every student about their research question, helping them revise it if they're having problems, helping them brainstorm new keywords, etc. How am I going to translate that to an online environment? I'll tell you what I ended up doing in a minute. But for the students in the online environment, the collaboration continued to be both passive and active with their peer mentors. So in the classroom and face-to-face environments, peer mentors sometimes are interacting directly with students, and sometimes they're presenting information to students. So students are both active and passive with their peer mentors. Sometimes they have to actively respond in a group work scenario. Other times students need to be passive as they're listening to their peer mentors say, this was my experience, here's how I did this. Connections with their peer mentor and the broader community, it's easy to see that happening in a face-to-face classroom because you see your peer mentor talking to your students. Clearly they're connecting. In the online environment, it's interesting because it's both less visible and more visible because you can track numbers of emails between students and peer mentors. You can see them interacting on a discussion board. But probably the most visible way, both in face-to-face interactions and online, to get that visible sense of community would be the writing showcase, which I'll also talk about in a second. But first, one of the things that teaching English 1020 online allowed us to do was to create videos for students. And here you can see a video that Kasim posted on our Blackboard site. So love the course management system, hate the course management system. It created a classroom for us. Blackboard became our classroom. And so Kasim was able to deliver his experiences every other week. He was talking to students like Daisha and Haley do about, hey, this is what I experienced when I took this class. So I talked to you a little bit about integrating Kasim explicitly into assignments. And this is one of those assignments. This is what I did instead of circulating on library day, which we could not do. In the online course environment, I created an assignment to have students brainstorm a list of questions, pick their favorite one, and then as part of the assignment, instead of me or Kasim kind of organically wandering over and being like, so what's your research question? No, they had to. I required them to email their question to Kasim, receive his feedback, and then revise their question according to his feedback. So while this loses a little bit of the kairos of the moment of being in the classroom and sort of like striking up that conversation as like, oh, hey, what are you working on? I'm here to support you. It's a little more forced, or explicit is the word that I choose to use. But it touched every single student and was still effective, I believe, in the function that I wanted it to perform, which was I wanted my students to gain from Kasim's experience, not just as a student in my class. He had already done a research project for me, created his own research question, but he had been my peer mentor for 2 semesters. So he had helped dozens and dozens of students revise their own research questions. So finally, integrating or translating the face-to-face classroom experience to online. For the composition learning community, one of the things that is a top priority for me is having my students participate in our end of the semester writing showcase, which I don't mind telling you is one of my favorite days. It's so fun. Everyone's invited. The showcase this semester is April 9th. It's a Monday. It's in the Student Center. Everybody should come. It's really fun. But this is where the fourth wall, I don't know, it's not the fourth wall, but the wall between an online course and a face-to-face course breaks down for me, because one thing that I require my face-to-face students to do is to participate in the showcase, and I also required it of my online students. I put it in the syllabus. I said there's one day that I need you to be on campus if you possibly can, unless you live like hours away, which only happened with one student. So, but the writing showcase turned out to be a really beautiful way to not only see those connections, not just between the students and the peer mentors, because I could facilitate that through videos and through assignments, but how do I get my online students to feel connected to the broader community of composition at Wayne State, which is one of our mission statement goals? A huge way that we see that in the face-to-face classroom is because we're constantly talking about the showcase, right? It's in the syllabus, and then we have days where I'm like, okay, don't forget, we're gonna do this showcase. There's gonna be other classes there. Here's what other classes have done in the past. We create a conversation about this showcase, and it creates anticipation and verbal and experiential or event-based sense of community in a face-to-face classroom. It also functioned that way for my online classes. Because we had this mutual point of reference where we're all going to be on campus, we're all going to create these presentations, we began talking about it on syllabus day, just like in a face-to-face class. We created like 2 or 3 discussion threads to brainstorm what's our topic going to be. I could show them links to photos from past showcases, just like I show in my face-to-face classrooms, but this was just a link online. So that continued conversation was happening in the digital environment, just as it does in a face-to-face classroom. And most beautifully and excitingly to me was having my online students who had really only seen each other in photographs that they'd posted on their blogs as, you know, peer mentor partners in discussion boards. They hadn't met each other face to face, but then they did on this day. And so the sense of community was, I think, particularly poignant because these students were like, oh, hey, it's you. They were experiencing the community that they had only experienced online in a face-to-face way, which I think that heightened the relief of it, brought it into greater relief, and personally made it all the more exciting to witness. So while there were some things that maybe weren't quite as organic as I would have liked in this online version of having my peer mentor interact and having students part of the composition learning community, I think other things translated really smoothly. And so I'm interested to see what Jule has to say, since she was doing the same thing for English 3010, except her class was hybrid. So she had the face-to-face and the online component.
Yeah. So, well, I've been a part of the learning community since we started. This fall semester was the first time that I was able to actually have a learning community classroom, right? So I was like really excited about this because both, 3010, we were piloting having a 3010 course, but also this was a hybrid course, so I was kind of curious as to how this would work out. And so I was really fortunate to have Rayanne, who was a student in my 3010 course in the summer, as our peer mentor, and she's going to present her reflection in a little bit on a podcast. But one of the things that I found as an instructor from running this course is one thing to kind of like hear about it secondhand, right? And be like, oh yeah, I guess I can buy into that, right? It's another thing to actually see it happen, like to unfold in your classroom, right? And so that was, to me, probably one of the most poignant things that I could walk away from. And I've been teaching 3010 for years now. So what I think that I walked away from with this experience were two things. One, I had so internalized this course that I was very confident in like what students should learn, the assignments, the objectives, and so forth. But I think that I had kind of forgotten potentially where students might be having stressors or fears or miscommunication about certain aspects of the course. And so one of the things that I quickly did with my peer mentor was to kind of just give the reins over, right? Which was a little bit scary for me, but it was just wonderful to see this young, composed woman in my classroom say, as I was introducing an assignment, stop me and say, so just FYI, you guys are all going to be freaking out. And this is going to seem like an impossible task, but it's going to be okay, and here's what I did. And when she says this one thing here, she really means this. Or when she's, so it was very enlightening to be reminded about my students' perceptions and my own perceptions of like the assignment, or forgetting how students might initially come into an intermediate composition course. And I start every semester by saying, don't freak out, it's going to be okay. And most of my students are like, yeah, okay. But having like a peer mentor stand up in front of the course and be like, don't freak out, it's going to be okay, and here's why it's going to be okay, was really, I think, very beneficial for students, especially for students in a hybrid course. So certainly, yes, we run half of the course online, we meet once a week. But having piloted it in the summer, I was expecting maybe a little bit more student interaction, and there was some, but not in the way that I experienced it this fall. And I think that was because I had a peer mentor, and also because I was open to putting myself into the shoes of my students in a sense, right? And so I found that my students were very engaged with the classroom and became very comfortable saying, I don't know, or I'm confused, or I'm scared, or I'm excited. You know, we actually had so many conversations, first time ever, in my 3010 course, where students were like, I think this is amazing that I'm learning about writing in my discipline, or I didn't think writing would ever apply to me, but it does, and this is super cool that I'm going to be learning how to do this. Or I thought I was a good writer, but I didn't realize that good writing was just not one thing. So that was very cool to me. And I think that stemmed a lot from having a peer mentor in the course that was moving around. Initially, we had issues with students engaging outside of the classroom. So they were really, really engaged with Rayanne and myself. But at first, they wouldn't respond to any of the discussion boards that we had posted, or Rayanne would be online and they wouldn't, But after the first assignment, and after Rayanne being like, so, hey, here's examples of my drafts. Here's where I messed up. Here's how I tackled this. Here's how I talked to my instructor about this. And then they got their first, their first assignment grade back. They were like, oh. And so then they started, I think it took them just that step to trust their peer mentor. Because I think at first they were like, well, why would I go to her when I can just talk to my instructor, right? But then they realized that she was a really useful resource. I think that one thing that I was really proud about with my 3010 course was that 15 out of the 20 students I had in that course participated in some way in the Learning Community Showcase, which I thought was pretty amazing. And they got 10 points, extra credit points. So it wasn't it was a make or break. They really wanted to be there and demonstrate what they had learned about the course. And the one thing that I took away from this course was that a learning community course is a writing community course. That's what we became. We, as students, as peer mentors, as instructors, we really had really amazing and engaged conversations about writing. What does writing do? Why is it important to me? Students were very dedicated to sharing their own experiences or their resources with other students, asking questions of their peer mentors. But I think the biggest takeaway too was that I started to see my students mimic what their peer mentor was doing with each other. So when we had peer mentoring, when we had peer review, or when we had in-class collaborative writing or workshops, all of a sudden I would see them be like, hey, I found this thing, I thought of you, let's talk about it. Or, hey, let's stay after class and talk about this. Or talking about even the writing in a way that most students don't want to, which is I'm really confused here. Instead of being like, oh yeah, that looks great. So I think that to me was what I will take away with that. Our classroom became a writing community classroom. So. And I think Rayanne should be.
Yeah, all right. I actually have. Check out that thing. Open.
Okay.
So we'll hear from Rayanne.
Hello everyone and good afternoon. My name is Rayanne Payne and I am currently in my third year at Wayne State University. I would like to give some of my reflections as a peer mentor, as well as why I think peer mentors are such an amazing resource to be provided to and utilized by students. I am currently starting my second semester as a peer mentor for English 3010 through the Composition Learning Community. In my summer course, when I took English 3010, we did not have a peer mentor. I feel that a peer mentor would have supported me in the class because, in my own experience, it can be intimidating to tell your professor, I need help, I don't really know what's going on right now, or I'm completely lost. A peer mentor is around a similar age, has experienced some of the same or similar obstacles, has recently taken the course or similar course, and is not grading the assignments or projects. With that being said, some things may be easier to say to a peer mentor. With having a peer mentor in a course, I feel that students are able to get more one-on-one help, insight, or explanations as a peer mentor is able to be in the classroom too for support. I feel that a peer mentor is able to be like the fly on the wall. We have taken the course, we understand what parts will be harder, how to find different things and direct you, or even how we may have brainstormed for a project. Each of these things are little bits of information that we are able to share from our own personal experience in the course. I feel that being a peer mentor also allowed me to develop multiple skills, with leadership skills being one of them. I was able to and will continue to guide students through the course throughout projects. Peer mentors are also able to show past examples of their own work, help others understand the overall goal or description of an assignment, as well as other questions that come up throughout the course. I was also able to improve my writing, presenting, listening, and speech skills by having the opportunity as a peer mentor. Sometimes it seems like you just need someone to listen to you. Sometimes you just need to say your concern or a sentence out loud to someone else for you to understand or solve the problem by yourself. I was able to improve my presenting and speech skills through the CLC showcase, through speaking to the class about my goals for the semester, about my ideas and insight in the course, as well as the way I would approach an obstacle. Being a peer mentor also allowed me to network with peers as well as faculty throughout Wayne State University through the course, the showcase, and meetings. I was also able to network with those in my future discourse community through a project. I also felt happy by seeing my peers and myself grow and progress throughout the semester. Overall, through peer mentoring, I feel that I have not only strengthened myself as a student, but I feel that I have learned so many skills for my discourse community and career path of my future. I strive and hope to be a member of the medical discourse community, and there are many skills that I've learned throughout this opportunity that will assist me. Some of these include my speaking skills, critical thinking skills, as well as my understanding of how other people learn and think. I was also able to learn about and see the diversity between everyone's way of writing, thinking, and speaking throughout the class. I feel that through peer mentoring, I was able to and am able to learn so much more about myself, my peers, and Wayne State University. Thank you so much and have a wonderful afternoon.
So I'm gonna just close with some remarks, especially thinking about, this was a great moment of reflection for us to kind of come together midway through this third full year of being a learning community in action. And so just wanna think a little bit about where we're headed. Jule just mentioned and talked about the feeling that a learning community is a writing community. And though this is part of our working lives every day as individual students and instructors and in the classroom, writing together was foundational to our learning community. That's how we got started, by reading and writing together. We read together in our first years to write our mission statement and to draft articles about collaborative learning and the design of our learning community. In the past couple of years, our attention has shifted almost wholly to the everyday work of the classroom, but we find ourselves, I think, at a good moment to return to writing and to revisiting, as we are today, how our mission and vision has played out in these last few years. The assessment that Jule designed for this year is one way that we could move forward with stepping back into our writing together. Having collected beginning and middle of the semester reflections from students, peer mentors, and instructors, will have new windows into the ways that this largest experiment that we began in 2013, the integration of peer mentors into our composition classrooms, plays out in the experience of students and peer mentors. And we might consider, I would say, even approaching this writing as we did our preparation for today, by not only listening to the voices of students and peer mentors, but inviting those voices to write with us. The other thing I'll talk about is growth. Sometimes it's easy to conflate notions of growth with size. If something is bigger, then it's better. The more data we have, the more we'll know. The greater our role of participants, the more impact we can have on campus. This year has in part been a collaborative experiment in growth. How can we involve more students, instructors, and peer mentors in our learning community? And in the fall semester, we had over 500 students in composition learning community classes. What happens when we integrate learning community sections across the composition sequence, all the way from 1010 into English 3050? How can we get more attendance at our student writing showcase? We need to advertise more, prepare more, chat ourselves up more, just keep doing more. At some moments, it feels like this attention to size has helped us grow. We have, as we do each year, invited new peer mentors into our community who are contributing ideas that are helping us expand our reach into more digital channels and into wider spaces of the university. The majority of our learning community sections this semester exist in intermediate writing courses, which parallels the weight of composition sections that exist in the winter term. At some moments, this size has presented us with challenges, though. How, as coordinators, do we make sure that we're supporting our instructors enough so that, especially the new instructors that join us, so that they feel they're becoming a knowledgeable, engaged part of our learning community? How can we better attend to the individual learning needs of our peer mentors when they're working in so many different kinds of classes and sometimes in classes that they haven't taken yet? But we can also see through the comments presented today that size, bigness, expansion is not the only measurement of growth. We see moments where when we look closely at the experience of one instructor or one student or one peer mentor, that the function of our learning community supports important changes at the level of the individual. A student who comes from another country and starts off, like Haley described, from square one, can end the semester with strong writing skills and a social support group in our class. A student who takes my 10-20 class in the fall can meet her future 30-50 instructor at the writing showcase and share her research passion and think about framing that research in terms of technical writing. Peer mentors can find their own strengths and opportunities and ways of growing that they maybe didn't anticipate. Especially, you've noticed that none of our peer mentors, none of the three that presented today, are English majors. I think this is something I hope we can remind ourselves and pay more attention to balance our notion of growth. And we can remember and promote also that sometimes it's our smallness that makes us a powerful community. As one of my students pointed out in her presentation to her classmates in December, our composition class was the one class in her schedule where there were fewer than 100 students, where she knew her classmates' names and where she felt like she could connect with other people. The most powerful work of our composition learning community is in this connection making in our smaller networks, this opportunity we have at Wayne State to help our students experience writing and learning as part of a community, to make all these possible connections that exist at a place like this, possible connections with others, with course concepts, with our lives outside of the institution, into connections that are alive and vibrant. Thank you.
Questions? Comments?
We're that good, you have no question.
I have one. Artie, I'm assuming that the peer mentors aren't compensated with money?
They are compensated.
Oh, they are compensated?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
As a function of being an official learning community, Wayne State, Amy's here representing, we have a small stipend to offer our peer mentors to compensate them. In addition, of course, to the compensation of being able to hang out with us.
That goes without saying.
They feed us often. We get lots of food.
There's a lot of pizzas involved. But yes.
Well, that's what I have. Oh, I asked I have other questions I can ask, but I'll let other people.
Yes.
Do you have one lesson learned that you would share with other people that wanted to do something like this? Or one thing that you think was really great, one thing that you would have done differently?
Here or just in general?
In general.
Oh. I think for me, I think the crucial thing for us was taking time to decide what we wanted this to be before we just did it. So there was the avenue to just start a learning community if we wanted to, but for us it was important, and I think that just speaks to our training, to research it for a period of time and try to learn what other people had done at different places, different institutions, and figure out what our students needed, and just based on what we know, and then asking those questions. So for me, that was, I think, the most important part of what we did, and why I think we can say that we were successful
in the way that we understand success for it. And I would add, to jump onto that get you a team. Get a group of like-minded people, because I think all of us could have done it alone. It would have been way harder and worse. But it's so important that we have the support structure of the four of us as coordinators. That allows us to have stronger, more vibrant connections with our peer mentors. And I think between the four of us, we're able to see things about the community, you know, interfacing with administrators, integrating, you know, like across our courses, and the burden is spread out, because this, although our peer mentors are compensated, we are not. So for anyone who's wanting to do something like this, which is kind of above and beyond your 9 to 5, don't do it alone. Be my best suggestion. Can I add something? Mm-hmm.
Okay, I would say if you wanted to start something like this, I just keep in mind that we didn't always get paid for this. So we were asked beforehand, you know, do you want to do this? We were doing this for free. We were taking time out of our student schedules, some of us taking anywhere from 12 to 16 credits to do this. So I think it's important. I mean, that payment is nice, you know, but we weren't always doing that. So we weren't always getting paid for that. And we care because we wanted to help people. Mm-hmm. So I think if you get that care aspect in this program is like really important, because, you know, we're not getting paid enough to live on, like it's like gas money, you know. And I'm like, so, but we care about the people. And every semester when I go in to do my entry speech with the students, it's fun just to see, you know, oh, I get to work with people just like me. So I think the care aspect in that is a big deal, because if you don't care about it, you're not gonna do it well, you know. And the whole purpose of this is to help.
Other questions?
How much interaction was there between a mentor and a faculty member? Was it extensive, or every once in a while, or?
I would meet with my peer mentor either on person or online at least once a week before each class.
Okay.
And then we would usually like debrief after the class or later on that week. And so that's where that idea of like they're getting paid, but the hours that they log in no way I think represent the actual time that they put into the class.
Or thought. Yeah,
or thought.
You know,
or
even
like
just thinking about
engagement.
it.
Yeah, because so there would be often times that Rayanne would email me, you know, like 10 at night before the class. The next morning it'd be like, I just thought of this thing. I really want to do this thing. Can I do this thing? And I was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. But I mean, so yeah, we at least on my end, we really engaged quite a bit. So
It's all the time.
yeah.
Because I'm with Amy, like, that's my best friend.
And I will say, to Dacia's point though, so there's levels too. I worked with 2 peer mentors, for example, a few years ago when I taught 1020, and one of them was a former student of mine in 1010. The other one was just a peer mentor who was, you know, on our staff. I don't know a better way of putting it, but so I interacted with them twice a week when I taught, and then when we would have meetings, and then occasionally via email. So, you know, we didn't have as much interaction as Dacia and I have. So I think it just depends on the student, but it is still, I would consider, regular, you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's something that I didn't expect, but has been a lovely surprise about this learning community. So when we set out to set it up, our goal was to recruit quality mentors for our students. I didn't expect to be a mentor as well. Like, I think that what we've realized is that when we can develop these relationships with our peer mentors, while they're mentoring our students, we're mentoring them.
Yeah.
And they're mentoring us too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, honestly, I learned so much from my
Same.
yeah.
The student becomes the teacher. Yeah, so it's a really awesome symbiotic relationship.
think to sum it up, we've become a family, like overall, because like every time we link up, it's like back in 1990. It's funny, I wasn't even born then, but that's
I was about to ask how you know.
But we do, like, we not only, I think the good thing about it is that we not only get work done, but we spend time. So when we have those meetings, those checkup meetings, like, halfway through the semester, and then at the end, and then we come together and we get to share stories about, okay, how was your semester? How did it go? What's one thing you learned? Because you learn something every day, but every semester there's a big story behind it all, and it's fun. In order to know that we help people, that's what makes it fun, because we are helping kids. Like I said, I came in and I noticed some of my peers couldn't read or write, things that I learned in high school. I'm like, you don't know how to do that? So it's that important aspect of it. It's like gives you like little butterflies in your tummy, and it's like, it's nice. And you are exposed to many, many people that you would have never thought that you would meet and learn things from.
Can I just say one small story that I just thought of? In the fall, last semester, I don't know how familiar you are with English 1010 at Wayne State, but we have a lot of students who come into the university and they're still, and it could be the case no matter which courses they're taking, right? They're still not sure what they're doing here, why they want to be here. They're not sure how to be a student. It happens, and I mean, I had similar experiences when I was an undergrad, but I remember one morning, it was early on in the semester, where Daisha came to class, and with her were two of my students, like at the same time, and it was early, so I didn't know them very well yet. They didn't know me, and Daisha had told me after class that she was walking through the student center on her way to my classroom, and she saw my students sitting in the student center, like with no indication that they were about to get up and go to a class that they were required to be at.
It works.
And because Daisha is who she is, and she's so good at what she does, and just being a friend and being a colleague, like she walked over and she was like, you have class, right? And they kind of looked at her, and she was like, come on. I
had to stand there and wait. Well, here's the thing. During the fall semester, it's still warm out, and you have all these activities, and I caught one walking the opposite way. I'm like, what are you doing? You got class, come on. And she was like, turn it, and I was like, yeah, bring it. Come on.
See, the thing is, like, I thought I could have, we could have lost that student, If Daisha weren't there, like, that student wouldn't have had that person who was, her same age, same, experience in undergrad saying, no. And that's it was a small moment of why, and there's so many ways that the peer mentors interact with the students, but it's why it's so important, because in that moment, and that student, by the way, just came to visit me, one of those students just came to visit me yesterday in class, and, she's enjoying 1020, and so it's like I see her, as I've seen so many students over the years, it's like, I may have never seen her again, she may have decided she didn't want to come for whatever reason, and it just makes me happy that we have so many different people in our community, in our family, as Daisha said, that have different, ways of interacting, different ways of hearing and understanding each other, and it's been amazing.
Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight.
I love you all. And I want to bottle everything you just said and the energy that you guys put out and what you gave to this, because I'm going to start crying. This is what a learning community is supposed to be. And you guys have all done it in different ways in your classrooms and in your interactions with life, whatever. But formalizing it and thinking about it and being so planful about it and assessing yourselves and communicating with each other and all the good things you're doing. That's why I do my job at Wayne State, and why I'm so glad you guys do your jobs at Wayne State. Like, no joke. And I knew about this much about the stuff you guys were talking about because I don't have that much interaction with you guys, and I'm coming on April 9th again, and I'm so excited. But this is the good stuff that's supposed to be happening. So thank you for giving your time and giving your energy and wanting to care and for caring. This is amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks everybody.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, good job, guys.
Uh,